As probably everybody here knows, Chip Kidd is one of the most celebrated polymaths of our era. Much of Mr. Kidd's initial renown stemmed from the incredibly witty, elegant, and surprising design work he's done for various publishers, most notably Alfred A. Knopf, for whom he'd worked since 1986. Mr. Kidd's iconic compositions have shaped the gestalt of books as mainstream as Michael Crichton's Jurassic Park and as resolutely non-mainstream as Mark Byers' Amy and Jordan collection. Hundreds of authors, ranging from James Ellroy to Cormac McCarthy to Haruki Murakami, have had their books visually elevated by Chip's insightful translation of their author's words into his own striking images. Mr. Kidd has also worked extensively as an editorial supervisor for the comics division of Pantheon Books, as well as DC Comics and various other places. He's also begun scripting comics for DC, as well as writing about and editing material related to Batman, Jack Cole, creator of Elastic Man, a character so memorably sung about by The Fall, and other pop culture icons. Mr. Kidd has also written a pair of related novels, The Cheese Monkeys and The Learners, which are hilarious demolitions of the insanity of art school and all that flows from it. The Cheese Monkeys in particular is a book that should be read by anybody considering this field of study. I have no firsthand experience with art school itself, but I spent enough time in the late 70s chasing hot punk chicks from the San Francisco Art Institute that I have a pretty good sense of what shenanigans they were up to, and the Cheese Monkeys has the ring of utter truth. Because he did not have enough on his plate already, Chip has also embarked on a musical career with Art Break, a new wavy trio whose musical attack has what we used to call the ring of RISD. Art Break's tunes and videos are easily findable on the web, and they should be heard by anyone who does not use the term quirky solely as an expletive. Named one of Time Magazine's 100 most influential people, Mr. Kidd is also sought after public speaker at events such as this and even grander venues, if such a thing is possible. His presentation today will be but an appetizer, and I suggest that people seek out longer examples of his verbal genius on YouTube, where he makes a strong case for himself as the most talented and demented preppy alive today. Chip Kidd.
Feel like we should quit while we're ahead. Just seeing Byron over there sort of doing those mimes, which were so sweet and sad, just reminds me real quickly of one of my most embarrassing public speaking moments. I was at Northwestern University 5 or 6 years ago with a bunch of other speakers, and I was going last, and they were having problems with the PA system, with the tech, as we always know, because it's still in its infancy. And so, there was a lot of like, can you hear me? Can you hear me? And of course, I shriek. I mean, we don't even need this microphone. And so I got up and I gave one of my sort of like break the ice jokes. And I said, if there's anybody in the back who can't hear me, you're fucking deaf. And I noticed off to the side that there was a woman gesturing. And she had just informed the deaf students at the school. Try to recover from that one. All right, so I've lost track. Oh, okay, so when Eva asked me to do this like 6 months ago or whenever it was, and I said, oh, well, look, if Gary Panter's there, then I'm there, because he's a hero and a friend. And I said, what is it? And she said, it's a small press expo. I said, okay, now let's just review here. I work for the biggest publisher in the whole world. Right? Random House, And she said, yes, we know, but come anyway. So here I am. And then I started thinking about, Byron sent me a bunch of questions, and he's like, what is your small press experience? And then I started to think about, well, I've done freelance for this and that, and then all of a sudden, bing, Vertical popped into my head. And so I don't know if people here are aware of who Vertical was and is, but they were a startup publisher in the early aughts, and their mission out of New York was to take Japanese literature and bring it to the US. So they came to me and to say, would you be our art director and our founding art director? And I was sort of wavering a little bit because I have a full-time day job at Knopf, which is part of Random House. And but then there was this one project that they said they wanted to bring here, which totally hooked me. So I'm just going to run through some of the vertical stuff real quick. Can we turn the lights down? And there was no rhyme or reason to this name. There's vertical. We're a straight up publisher or something like that. I mean, it's just kind of typically wonderfully Japanese. They just like the sound of the name. So that was the logo and the stationery in the application, and they just kind of let me go to town. Twinkle Twinkle is a novel about this couple in this apartment building complex in Tokyo, and they adopt a little boy, and all these kind of hijinks ensue. But this is actually a die-cut cover, and when you take the jacket off beneath those holes, you get this whole other sort of world underneath. I've done several trips to Japan, actually even before signing on with Vertical, and I love to try and find and buy vintage paper toy ephemera stuff there. This was about a woman who was an assassin and just making it look sort of dangerous. This is Koji Suzuki, who did, this is Ring, which was made into a film about this videotape that if you watch it and then you don't get somebody else to watch it in 24 hours, you will die. And so you have to keep the ring going. These three covers by him use acetate to form these kinds of moire patterns. Spiral was the second one, and Loop was the third. And this is on the binding underneath, and then when you put the jacket on top of it, then you get that. And so everybody there was just so supportive of these kooky designs, and this really, to me personally, was very refreshing because, I've been at Knopf for 25 years and counting, and I really love it, but every now and then you fall into this rut where you think, I need to feel, fresh about doing this stuff again. This was something that I had always wanted to do, very expensive. This is a 3-layered jacket, and this is a novel about a member of the Yakuza aging and sort of like reflecting back on his life, and then he's sort of like slowly going crazy and becomes a threat to the mob and vice versa. So underneath that is all of these vintage Japanese matchbooks that he spends a lot of time in bars getting loaded. And so this shows you the sort of the different layerings, and you're peeling back the layers of his life to reveal him. This was a historical novel about World War II from the Japanese point of view. This is the plots of these things. This is about a woman who feels like she's a portal to another world. And again, the title is very, very literal. But we die cut the cover so that when you flipped it open, it became this electrical outlet. This is about a little kid who is obsessed with flies. This is a ghost story. This actually is a really weird, and this whole thing with the Hunger Games this weekend. This novel is actually very similar to that concept. This is about an art teacher. This is pretty self-explanatory. And it's a great sort of fill in the blanks sort of. And this, I mean, this is cheating. This is very silly, but it really is a genuine, earnest history of the subject matter at hand, and just about making it fall. This is a really cool conceptual novel about language and language sort of coming alive, and people would speak a certain sentence, and then the words would literally fall out of their mouths, and then be able to pick them up and throw them at each other, and it's really, really weird. This is what I call the decoder cover. The white ovals are die-cut holes, and if you take the cover off, you get this sort of word search thing that can only be read if the jacket is back on. And this then was the reason that I really signed on with Vertical. They were very determined to bring about the massive graphic novel epic series of the life of the Buddha by Tezuka to the U.S., and which several other companies had attempted, and they could never find a distributor because people were too worried that it was too big and too long and too massive to work. So it was 8 volumes, and obviously Tezuka had long since died, so I had to repurpose the artwork inside, and it's a truly amazing series. And the most fun was completing them in hardcover and putting them on your shelf. You get a shelf life of the Buddha, moving from one age of his life to the other, since over a sort of rainbow. So that's Vertical. And I'm just going to talk about a couple other things. Eva kept emphasizing punk rock here, and I can, of course, see why. And I haven't worked on many music projects at all. I'm pretty much billed as a book guy. And every now and then, some enterprising either musician or art director at a record label will say, "Oh, let's try and get him to do this." And so John Spencer contacted me personally and said, "I have this new album. It's called Plastic Fang, and I'd really love for you to work on it." And so he sent me a bunch of reference material. Like, I really like these, and they were all like creepy and eerie comics. And so I love hang tags. I love novelties. It's suddenly, when you put something in a plastic sleeve and then put a header card on it, it somehow transforms it and makes it really fun. And so he totally dug this. That was how the CD was produced. But we made all these different versions of it. It was Matador, and they were completely behind it. This was the single, and you with a die-cut hole. This was the vinyl, which is really, really, that was so much fun to do. And you have to, if you're interested, the real actual things are much more interesting than looking at these shots. And they're doing promo, and just reminding me, God, this is what it must have been like in the 70s. This was the second single. This was the third one. And when you take and then all the labels had art on them too. So when you took the CD out, you got the monster, and that was just a real hoot. And he was totally supportive, and the label was supportive, and it was a real kick. The other major album package that I worked on is for somebody who's entirely different. And I don't really have all the all the process stuff for this. But this actually went really, really well. I was completely skeptical of the whole thing. But sort of some of the karmic things were kind of great. Like my office is at 55th and Broadway, and the Brill Building is at 50th and Broadway. So I would just like walk down Broadway to go to his office and studio and show him stuff, and that was really fun. Although the first meeting I went to, along with the art director of Warner Brothers Records, so we go into the Brill Building, we go up to his floor of it that he bought or whatever, and so it led into this massive room overlooking Broadway, and he's got a piano and a Picasso and all these things, and out he comes, and we get introduced to each other, and he has this like crazy stereo, that's all like mega perfect, and he says, okay, you're gonna sit here in the middle of the sofa, and so then he goes over and he says, okay, now we're going to listen to the record. And so he hits play, and he sits down across from me in a chair and crosses his arms and looks at me for the entire length of the album. Oh my fucking God. I mean, and then I just start to like tap my toe and like, no. And it was bizarre. And so finally it ends, clap, clap, clap. And he looked at me and said, I really don't think you liked it. So it went on from there. But anyway, it was a really actually ultimately wonderful experience. And that is my little godson, who is the son of the photographer, a guy named Jeff Spear that I work with. And there's a lot of stuff in the album about having kids and raising them and doing right by them and all that sort of stuff. But there's also, which he either realized or didn't realize or whatever, but there's like a reference to water in every song. And I like pointed that out to him. He's like, really? I said, yes. Mr. Bridge over troubled you know what. So, and then this was one of the, it's not a good slide, but this is one of the things for the single. Okay, so this is like the one, publishing thing recently that I did that I'm really happy about. And no, it's not a independent press. It's for Knopf. But I've done Haruki Murakami's covers for many years, and I just adore him. I think he's great, and we've had a really good publishing experience together. And this is a really, typically Murakamian weird story, and it opens with this woman descending a spiral staircase off of an elevated highway in 1984 in Tokyo. And when she gets to the bottom, all of a sudden, everything seems oh so slightly different. And so I wanted to explore the concept of parallel planes of existence, sort of like a jacket and the binding of the book that it's underneath it. So I decided to play with materials. This is the jacket itself, and it's on a semi-transparent vellum. And so it is the one part of the reality, and then underneath it then is the complementing image on the binding. And so when the jacket then is wrapped around the book, the reality becomes complete. And this costs more money to do, and we have an initial printing of 100,000 copies, which for us is a lot. So we sort of took a gamble on it. But the final product makes you consider a person who is straddling two planes of existence at once, even if you don't have any idea what the book's about. And it really sort of paid off. They had like parties like Harry Potter style book parties the night before, waiting for this thing to come out. Now, that's not because of the cover, but it's because we've been building him as an author over many years. But then it debuted on the Times list at like number 2, which is totally unprecedented for him and for us. I mean, this is a 900-page novel that is as weird as it is compelling and features a climactic scene in which a horde of tiny people emerge from the mouth of a sleeping girl and cause a German Shepherd to explode. So it's not exactly Jacqueline Suzanne. Anyway, so that was a really big, fun thing to do. And so this is my concluding project. This was a real labor of love for me. And again, this kind of represents a certain kind of small publishing or niche publishing phenomenon within this giant conglomerate of DC Comics. And I sort of became known to me about 10, 15 years ago through the cartoonist David Mazzucchelli, that there were Batman comics in 1966, because of the success of the TV show, that were officially licensed by a Japanese publisher so that they could write and draw their own Batman and Robin stories for their own audience. And so initially, these came out in weekly installments in a publication called Shonen King. And at first, it was all very much Adam West related. This invites all sorts of inquiry. The gun in Robin's hand and his little panties all bunched up. So I became obsessed with this because it's really sort of obscure, and DC Comics has no record of it. And so I started with another collector named Saul Ferris to find this material, and which we did through vintage manga dealers. It all came out in like a year, between 66 and 67, and then it vanished. It was never collected, it was never translated, nothing. So the only way to find it was to get the artifacts. And so once we got enough of them together to put into a book, we went back to DC Comics and we made a proposal. And we said, look, we think this is a really interesting, totally lost part of the history of this character who we love, and we think we need your permission to get the license to do this. And they said yes, but they said, other than that, we can't help you. We just don't have any of it. And so it turned out that the artist for this stuff was a guy named Jiro Kuwata, who, through Japanese contacts, we found out was actually still alive. But his main character in Japan was called Eighth Man. Now, we found him, and we sent him our proposal through an intermediary, and he was very thrilled, and he said, I had no idea that there was so much interest in the US in Batman from Japan. And I said, that's because there isn't. But we are going to try and change that. So, Eighth Man. Eighth Man was totally cool and beautiful, and was totally ripped off to become RoboCop, right? But they didn't give any of the credit. But it's the total same concept. This, policeman gets killed in the prime of life, and they put his brain into a robot. But the reason he's called Eighth Man is because they had tried this 7 times before. And it did not work. And then the 8th time it did. Which is that's a wonderful Japanese concept. It's just really practical. Of course, it's Eighth Man because we tried 7 other times. Now, the interesting thing for me is I grew up in Philadelphia in the late 60s into the 70s, and we had Dr. Shock on out of Channel 17, and he would play all these obscure Japanese shows for kids on his afternoon show. And he showed Astro Boy, and he showed Ultraman and Johnny Sacco and all this kind of stuff. And he showed Eighth Man cartoons. Tobor the Eighth Man cartoons. Yes, thank you. You're supposed to be miming, not speaking out. But anyway, so yes, this is Tobor the Eighth Man, which of course is robot spelled backwards, and really, really cool stuff. And so basically, the Batman project had to happen so quickly that he said in an interview that I did with him over correspondence that he didn't have time to learn how to draw like an American, which I think was the total saving grace. So now we have Batman and Robin. So Robin's a child again, which I thought was totally great. And I wanted to alter these as little as possible. I did not flop them. Everything goes from right to left. And I did not change any of the sound effects. So this is from an episode called Lord Deathman. And Lord Deathman has a very special power. He has the power to die. Which of course means any of us could become Lord Deathman. However, he also has the power then to mysteriously resurrect himself. And so they keep burying him, and then he runs around the next day. And Lord Deathman is one sort of lethal son of a bitch. So here is his goons open firing on Batman and Robin, and Batman said, "Robin, they're coming out." "I'm on it." Now, this is not a technical glitch. These are the succeeding panels to these. The coloring is insane, and it will go from red and black to just purple, and then it will go back to full color and then to red and black and just purple. And I'm sure it was a cost issue, but still, it's weird. "Lord Deathman's getting away. Leave his goons to me." Poof. Poof, poof, poof. And they love the gadgets. So out comes the Batarang. What? And now we're back to color, red and black. "Okay, Lord Deathman, you're immobilized. You can't run." Translating these was really interesting because I worked with a wonderful woman named Anne Ishii, who is a Japanese American, and so she would do the literal translations, and then I would translate the translations. So some of them were really hysterical. Like you had Clayface breaking through the wall, about to attack Batman and Robin would say, "Clayface is breaking through the wall and is about to attack us." So I changed that to, "Oh no." And sometimes these things had covers, but they all had splash pages, which are just absolutely beautiful. Like to me, as a Batman fan, this was like discovering, the great Beatles album that got made in Japan and then never released. And they all had this official sticker that says, "This is the official Japanese Batman, copyright National Periodical Publications, 1966. And here's a little bit more. This was a 4 or 5 part story. And again, how would you ever want that lost to history? So I'm just going to end this little particular segment with with a little animated sequence. So the book comes out, and it was a lot of fun. And there's this wonderful cartoon show, which has now run its course, called Batman Brave and the Bold, and my friend Paul Dini was writing one of the last episodes, and it's Batman's Strangest Cases. And so I get a call from Warner's TV saying, "We'd like to do a 15 minute segment on Bat-Manga and do it as an anime show from the 60s. Is that okay with you? I said, you've got to be kidding. This is like what I dreamed of as a child. So most of it's on YouTube. And it is absolutely delightful and wonderful. And I'm not going to play the whole thing, but I'm going to try and play the theme song because, you know, all these wonderful old Japanese cartoons had theme songs that were completely done in the U.S. Let's see if I can find it.
Hang on for an adventure in Bat-Manga.
He flies and fights, Batman. Beauty and virtue, Batman. Hours fall away, Batman saves the day. Also for Wonder Robin. Batman and Robin came crusaders at night. It's Bowser, Batman.
Oh, this is...
In our last episode, Batman and Robin once again triumphed over their arch-enemy, Lord Deathman, after he returned from the grave. This time, will their most cunning adversary stay buried?
The first time anyone has been buried twice in the same grave.
In any case, it's over now. There is no way even he could escape from the grave again. What's going on? Why is it suddenly so dark?
Sorry, I should have done that.
At last, Lord Deathman!
Batman, you fool. Do you really think to die, Lord Deathman can be stopped so easily? What you caught was merely the shadow of death, which can slip your fingers at any time, and come back from the grave to destroy you.
Cool! Accept! Lord Deathman, they keep me up all night and make me tired all day.
Star's party would be a nice diversion.
I'd rather sleep.
Ladies and gentlemen, your attention, please. This afternoon, for your entertainment, you will see a man literally buried alive, only to emerge from the ground an hour later, completely unharmed.
What?
Now, cover him in dirt.
Bruce, it's been 60 minutes.
I know. He's out of oxygen.
He's dead.
Wait. Don't rush to any conclusions. Closer.
He's grinning.
He's alive. As you see, I live. It's a secret yoga method.
Secret yoga method?
Using the ancient Hindu art of slow yoga breathing, one can appear to stop their breath and heartbeat. The appearance of death is quite convincing.
That's it. Come on, Dick. We're leaving.
Mr. Wayne, so soon?
Lord Deathman was using the same secret yoga method.
He made himself appear to be dead. Then his friends came and dug him up. He's gone.
Always one step ahead. Batman, I offer you this coffin as a gift. Lord Deathman.
I see you've uncovered my secret. However, this will be the last time we will meet.
Ooh, what happens next? Sorry. So you can see the rest of that episode on YouTube or whatever. But they just did an incredible job with it. So funny and clever. So thank you, and we can do the thing.